Hi, my name is Arjun Chaudhary, and welcome to Energize the Tech Revolution. Sylvia LEYVA Martinez is a principal analyst at Wood Mackenzie's Power and Renewables practice, leading the North America utility scale solar coverage. She's passionate about the energy transition and empowering women in STEM, serving as the host of WoodMac's Interchange Recharge podcast, city lead of Women and Climate, and board member of Women in Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energies. With expertise in market dynamics and financial strategies for utility scale solar PV projects, Sylvia's experience spans commercial advisory, asset management, and renewable asset valuation. Welcome to the show, Sylvia.
Thank you for having me, Arjun. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So, Sylvia, let us start off by learning a little bit about your educational journey. Now, you have a bachelor's in engineering physics and a master's in renewable energy. What inspired you to pursue engineering physics, firstly, and then master's in renewable energy?
I think, the journey when you're starting to think about careers and what you like to do, like, I never ever thought that I would be a physicist. I remember that there was this kind of, I don't know how to call it, like career fair, but it was for majors. So you would go around the different faculties and you would learn about the types of classes that you would take, the professors. And when I saw physics, I mean, I just fell in love with it. It was like, there are so many things that are applicable to so many fields within the industry and the academy and beyond. So I really like the intellectual challenge. And more than one person told me, like, oh, engineering physics is the most difficult major in tech, like in my school. And I don't know, I just thought it was a really good challenge to pursue. And I generally ended up loving everything related to physics. Like, I just felt that it was just like opening the door to understanding how the universe works. But then at the same time, it was also like eye-opening to see, like, yes, I can do these very complex equations. I can solve, like quantum dynamics problems. But how is this applicable? And gladly I took it was a renewable energy course, but it was focused on material science. So I understood the thermoelectric electrical properties of semiconductors. So that's when, like, I just dipped my toe in the renewable energy space, and that's when I decided that I wanted to pursue that instead. So I did like a double program. So I majored in engineering physics and I did my master's degree at the same time. So it was like a great opportunity to really continue working on energy, but also like not fully leave aside my physics education. So I think it just came very naturally to then change to renewable energy. And the renewable energy program was in France. So it was like an added benefit because I really wanted to live abroad for a few years before graduating. So I think it was great.
Amazing to hear, Sylvia. Nothing like, navigating your way through challenges, learning in the process, and also getting some international exposure. So amazing to hear that, Sylvia. Now, in terms of your professional journey, Sylvia, you started off in the oil and gas sector in the world of consulting, and then you transitioned into renewables. Now, would love to learn more about, your professional journey and story, and again, why the transition into renewables eventually.
So I guess like the big question is actually, why did I start in oil and gas in the first place? Since I did my master's in renewables, right? So when I graduated, like I had to go back to Mexico to finish my degree, like in order to obtain both diplomas. So it was going to be more difficult for me to look for a job in Europe because I was not ending my studies there. So then when I came back to Mexico, I graduated and I knew that I wanted to do something related to energy. But at that point, there was the energy reform ongoing under President Peña Nieto. And it was the opening of the energy industry to private companies and more of these public-private partnerships ongoing. So this was like a completely new world for Mexico. Um, so I thought, like, well, if I want to be like, if I want to participate with different companies, with different industries, I think consulting would be the best way to do that. So when I was looking for a job in energy consulting specifically, there are very few firms that focus on this. And that's when I decided to join back then Schlumberger Business Consulting, because it was the only consulting company that focused on energy at the time. And that's what I wanted to do. But when I first interviewed, I was told that there was opportunity to do renewable energy projects. So like that was the hook that they used at the time to to hire me. And in the end, like unsurprisingly, most of the projects were in oil and gas, because most of the clients were national oil companies. Most of the work with all the energy reform was focused on like traditional fuel space. So there was really not much room for renewables. And when I was looking for jobs in the renewable space, there were smaller companies. Being completely transparent, it was not very well paid. So that's why I decided to keep like this career in the oil and gas space, because I mean, we or most of us have student loans to pay. So we're like, okay, I can focus on that for a bit. Maybe I can do a renewable energy project or two, and then like I can see how I can pivot my career eventually. So that's how it all first started. And then I moved to my current company, to Wood Mackenzie. One of the former vice presidents from SBC started the consulting practice at Woodmac. And he was the one who told me who asked me if I wanted to join. And I was like, of course, like I would love to go with you. But my only condition is that I do at least a couple of projects on renewable energy, because that didn't happen during the first few years of my career. So I really want to like apply what I learned in my master's, and that's really what I'm the most passionate about. So like gladly he accepted. There is a big renewables consulting practice at Woodmac. So when I first started working at Woodmac, one of my first meetings was with the head of the renewables practice. He was based out of Houston, but he was visiting Mexico to go see some clients. We met and we really clicked. Like he liked my experience, he liked my background, and that's when he told me that he wanted me on the team. And fast forward a few months later, I received an offer to join the Houston team, and that's when I fully transitioned to the renewable space. So my very first role in renewables was actually in consulting. I was doing projects for different technologies, different regions, and then time passes. Like it had been maybe 2 or 3 years of this renewables consulting work. And that's when I realized, like, wait, I've been in this space for years and I am not a specialist in anything. Like, I know a little about a lot of things. And I had like this feeling like, oh, now I need to really pursue like a specific knowledge, like know more or become the expert about something specific. And there was an opportunity on the research team at Woodmac, which also just is like the largest piece of the pie in Woodmac, to become the SME or the subject matter expert on solar for the US. So like, perfect. I love solar. It's my favorite technology. It's a market that I already know. So this seems like a very good choice for me career-wise. So that's when I ended up in my current role, and I've been there ever since. And I've also done like a couple more things as well. But like that has been the main focus over the last few years.
Such a beautiful story, Sylvia, and many congratulations on your transition from oil and gas to renewables. Now, you're currently a principal analyst in Wood Mackenzie, and your focus is on utility scale solar. I would love to learn, the day-to-day of your role. And you mentioned that, solar is your favorite technology. Why is it your favorite technology?
Let's start with that one. So I think solar, I mean, with all the work that I've been doing on different technologies, I feel solar is the most democratic one, so to say. So if you want to, you can install a panel on your house. You can have like a little panel outside to charge your phone or whatever. You can buy, these backpacks with a little panel so you can plug in your laptop and your phone. So to me, it's like you don't need to be a specific type of player. You don't have to need you don't need a specific profile to be able to install solar. I work with one of a few nonprofits. You mentioned them. One of them, Let's Share the Sun, they focus on installing solar in communities that have medical needs, and they are like low income communities in general. They focus in Puerto Rico. So I've been like I've been there and installed the panel. Like I was drilling on the roof, I was carrying the panels. I didn't do the electric work because I know that that's a bit more complex. But in general, like I have this sense that anyone can do solar if they want to. So that's why, to me, that is a technology that I wanted to focus on, and that's why I feel so passionate about it. And like related to my specific work, so what I do is market intelligence. So people want to know how much solar will get built in the US, who is building it, and how much it's costing. So I have to strike a balance between the data. We have an entire team that tracks thousands of projects across the US to see how feasible they are and how expensive they are, and ultimately try to understand how much of all these announcements or bragawatts are actually going to come online. And so that's the main part of the job. The other part, like I need to complement all this data with conversations with the industry. So I can, like I set up calls with financiers, with CEOs, developers, banks, government, and just ask them like, hey, how are you thinking about this new tariff? Or how is this the new house bill? Like, how is this affecting your development strategy? So that helps inform my forecast and is like trying to consolidate the different views from the industry, because as you probably know and your audience knows, the view from a developer will be very, very different from the view of a manufacturer or from a financier or the off-taker. So just trying to get all those tidbits and generate an educated guess of what is going to happen. Like based on what I'm hearing, this is what I think is going to happen in the market. And that's how I ultimately build the 10-year forecast that is published in many of our reports. So my core deliverables are, so to say, like I write reports, and that's how I share market intelligence. But alongside with that, I have many presentations with clients. I present at conferences, moderate panels. So a lot of like thought leadership and public speaking roles, because I like to share the research that me and my team produce. And I also lead one of Wood Mackenzie's podcasts, the Interchange Recharge. So we can talk about that a bit later, maybe, but it's just like a good way to like, not only, I think a lot of people think of analysts that, oh, you're just like on your computer writing, you don't talk to anyone in a dark room, but that's not at all how we do things here. It's actually encouraged to not only focus on the data, and we know that the data only shows like a very limited snapshot of how things are evolving. We need to talk to people, and we need to balance what these people or the players are saying versus what we're seeing in the data. So that's pretty much what I do at WoodMac.
Amazing to hear, Sylvia. Glad to hear that there are so many facets to your role, and you must be extremely busy. And it seems like a very well-rounded role. So very happy for you there,
Thank
Sylvia.
you.
Now,
It's fun, definitely, particularly over the past few weeks.
That's great to hear, Sylvia. Now, Sylvia, you mentioned that research is a big component of Wood Mackenzie, and
Yep.
the power and renewables team. You're focused on solar. What are the
Yep.
other sort of research teams under the power and renewables team that is conducting research in various other technologies? Would love to learn more about the other teams in power and renewables.
Ooh, so for example, like in my case, I cover utility scale solar in the US. Like that's my very, very small niche of information that I cover. So similar as me, there are other analysts covering solar, but in different markets. So there's going to be an analyst covering solar in Latin America, solar in Europe, solar in Middle East, Asia, China specifically, because it's such a big market. So like for each technology, we're going to have different regional analysts. So we have global coverage across all different technologies. And then the technologies that we cover exclusively on the power and renewable side are wind, storage, grid edge, and we also have like these energy transition teams that includes nuclear, carbon capture, utilization and storage, and hydrogen. So it is like a very well-rounded team of analysts that have this global coverage for all different technologies. And then we work together in our views and we communicate with the power team. So the power team takes the inputs of all the different technologies, and they are the ones who produce the outlook on power prices, on generation per technology. That is what most of our clients are interested in, like how our power price is going to change. what is our assumption on gas prices and how that will affect the generation mix over the next few years. So they are the ones that consolidate everything and produce these power curves that are used by many clients in many due diligence projects and such. So that's like an overview on how the structure of the power and renewables team is. There is an entire different team covering more like traditional oil and gas, chemicals, metals and mining. And we talk to them, but obviously like more of the consolidation side will be done on the power team side.
Makes sense, Sylvia. Thanks for sharing. Gives a much better understanding of what the team dynamics and structure is. Now, you mentioned earlier, Sylvia, that you have a podcast show called Interchange Recharged. I would love to learn, more about the podcast. What made you start it, and how has the journey been so far?
Yeah, so Interchange Recharge is a podcast where we interview the main players or we talk about the main technologies and drivers shaping the energy transition, whatever that means. So in the show, we have had people covering solar, obviously. The most recent one it talks about wind and all the challenges that are happening in the segment and how the US environment compares to the European environment because it's very different. We've had discussions on CCUS, discussions on nuclear. So it's very varied. And so I started with the role like informally. I started in like end of last year. It was like my trial run because I'm not a podcast person. Like I didn't usually listen to podcasts before becoming a host myself. So, but as I mentioned earlier, like I have public speaking experience. I do fireside chats with people, and the marketing team saw that. So, one of the vice presidents approached me and told me, like, Sylvia, I think you would be a great fit for the interchange. So I was like, well, like if you think so, like I didn't believe it myself at the beginning, but then like as I started interviewing people, it's like I am doing this like normally as part of my job. And what I love is that I'm learning so much about other technologies, and a lot of the discussions that we have can complement my own like day-to-day research. So that really helps. And I understand like what are the different challenges for different technologies, what are the opportunities, and just try to see everything like whole circle. How is the entire like energy transition ongoing, and who are the players that we should be considering more seriously? So that has been great so far. And I don't know, it's been like very different. You have your own podcast, so you know the drill of like how it is to interview people and preparing for the sessions. So it has been a learning curve for me, definitely. I do notice some improvement compared to end of last year when I first started, and I feel much more comfortable on the role. And I encourage everyone, like if you want to start pursuing a podcast, maybe in energy or some other topic, started. Like it's relatively easy to do, and it's just a matter of like finding interesting people to interview, and obviously like doing the due diligence. And other than that, you can record on Zoom, you can record on many other platforms. So I think it's a very interesting avenue to explore for many.
Totally resonate with that, and very valuable recommendation, Sylvia. I must say that I'm a huge fan of your podcast show, and I'm an
Thank you.
avid listener. I'm eagerly await your episodes. So thank you so much for starting that. And I'll be sure to put your podcast link in our show notes. Um,
Yeah, please. And I also post a lot on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to see more about like the podcast itself, or also the research that me and my team produce, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So connect and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you'd like to be on the show as well.
Amazing, Sylvia. Now let's dive deep into some of the research that Wood Mackenzie is conducting in the various renewable energy technologies. We'll predominantly focus on, solar, and touch
Yeah.
upon briefly on a few of the other technologies. So for starters, Sylvia, where do you see the future trends in terms of, solar technology? Where do you see it heading? Would love to learn more.
Yeah. I personally don't cover technology as much. So I will focus more on the market, because technology, I know that there has been this transition ongoing from what we call P type or legacy chemistry of cells to N-type or top content heterojunction. So in a nutshell, it's just that modules are becoming more efficient and less expensive to produce. So that's pretty much it. So the more efficient your panel is, then the more wattage that you have per dollar that you spend. So that's what more and more players are going to be looking forward to. And there's another conversation about inverter types, which is a bit too technical for me. But overall, like we're seeing like a transition on inverter type. So that is also increasing the efficiency, like reducing the costs. So that will help improve the economics of projects overall. But on the market side, what is very interesting, and I'm going to focus on the US because that's my main market. There is this like there is a very interesting mixed dynamic because of all the policy and tariff uncertainty that we have experienced as a market over the past few weeks, and the need or the rush to find electricity as a country. So the current Trump administration has been very explicit about the need for the US to become the leader in the AI race. But the only way to do that, because it's such an energy intensive industry or endeavor, you need to get all the energy that you can get. So right now, like we have seen the role of solar becoming more prevalent over the past few years. And the main issue now is that this need to increase the electricity sources available is being juxtaposed by the uncertainty on the policy side, because we also the Liberation Day tariffs that were announced. We saw that there was an anti-dumping and countervailing duties investigation by the Department of Commerce. So effectively, the biggest sources of modules are now being tariffed. Like they have new duties. So the US is in this process of looking for alternative sources of modules. So there is this constraint on the supply side because of all the tariffs and the uncertainty around them. And on top of that, there is the policy uncertainty, like what will happen if the tax credits go away? The most recent bill passed by the House in terms of the reconciliation of the budget, it's going to be a challenge if it's passed as is by the Senate. But effectively, there is a very it would be a problem for the US solar industry because the tax credits would effectively go away. There are only a few projects or a few players that can effectively start construction within 60 days of the passage of the bill, and that could be completed by 2028. So a project needs to achieve these two things in order to continue with the tax credits. On top of that, there is this requirement to be free of foreign entities of concern. So basically, if the project itself or ownership of the project has any ties to these foreign entities of concern, like the main one or the main that has been mentioned over the past few months is China, then the project would not qualify for the tax credits. And it can be in the form of equipment. It can be a chip within the inverter. It can be, I think someone mentioned like, oh, the doors, like part of the doors or the bolts that are used to like for certain types of transformers or inverters, they are Chinese and they're practically only produced in China. So that effectively that little bolt could make the project not qualify for tax credits. So it's still like very vague. We know that things can change over the next few weeks as the Senate reviews the bill. But the enemy in this, like in all these conversations, is the uncertainty, like not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And we have seen these uncertainty freeze projects over the past few years. It was very clear in 2022, where we saw a dip in installations because of the implementation of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act and some other trade actions that affected supply. At this point, like, how are you going to negotiate a contract if you don't know if the tax credits are going to be in place, or if you don't know where you're going to be sourcing your equipment from and how much it's going to cost, or if it's going to be subject to tariffs? So at this point, like that is the biggest element that we are evaluating at WoodMac, just trying to understand the impact of all this uncertainty, how players are reacting, and effectively how many projects can actually come online under these circumstances. The conversation is very similar in other technologies. So wind is even more challenged than solar because of all the like more stringent approach that the Trump administration has taken towards this technology. And for storage, the main challenge is that most of the equipment is directly sourced from China. So it is an even more complex path because there is no supply chain or very little supply chain developed all across the world or in regions outside of China. So that will be the main challenge because ultimately the industry as of right now still needs Chinese equipment to fulfill projects. And there is no other source of equipment that is readily available over the next few months. So that is the most tricky part for this other technology.
I can totally understand that we're living in very uncertain times now. I
Yep.
truly wish, the very best for the clean energy sector and hope everything goes smoothly in the upcoming weeks. My sincere best wishes are with the sector.
Yeah, I think we're all sharing that that sentiment.
Yeah, for sure, Sylvia. So now you had earlier mentioned, Sylvia, about the AI load being AI technology being very sort of
Yeah.
prevalent in the upcoming years. Massive AI data centers, hyperscalers are going to be constructed, which are going to require massive amount of power, somewhere within the range of 100 to 300 megawatt. Where do you see like the future in terms of energy mix powering these data centers? Do you see a combination of different energy sources? Would love to learn your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so there has been this one is a very tricky one because the main constraint right now is the policy uncertainty that I was talking about a little bit ago. So, in terms of economics, solar and solar plus storage are the most economic ways right now to serve this new load. The main problem with this is that the type of load that data centers represent is more related to base load. So the generation profile of solar plus storage is going to be different compared to other base generation sources such as nuclear or even coal. So at this point, like I don't have a clear answer on what the generation mix is going to look like, but some of the elements that we are evaluating at WoodMac is that, well, there is going to be energy demand not only on the AI and data center side, but also on the manufacturing side. We're seeing a revival of manufacturing, and that is also very energy consuming. And we're also seeing an increase on the residential demand, like population is just increasing. So the combination of all these factors is going to define what is going to be the best course of action in terms of how these load is going to be served. So what we have heard so far is a potential delay in the retirement, mainly of fossil fuel generation fleet, including gas and coal. So that is one of the options. Like it's not building new generation, it's just not retiring stuff that was planned to be retired, although it's complex to do that as well. Another option to source electricity in the near term would be gas turbines. And the problem with this is that the supply chain is very constrained. We have heard from different players that there are no gas turbines available before 2030. So who is going to close the gap between now and over the next 5 years? So that is going to be the tricky part. We have heard other potential options, like instead of having a few very large gas turbines, you can have smaller ones. But then the problem with the smaller ones is the emissions. And if there is an area, and now like data centers would be close to other sources of load. So if there is an area that is highly populated, then the requirements and emissions are going to be very stringent. So having these smaller turbines may not be an option. Nuclear, there's still a very long way to go on the nuclear side. I think my colleague said that the earliest that we could expect some advancements in nuclear would be over the next 10 years. There is a lot of hope about the like small modular reactors and the possibility of them to becoming a good source of base generation, but the economics are not there yet. Historically, nuclear has had like overruns in cost and time. So as of this point, we're yet to see like the first successful small nuclear project to come online in the US. And the problem is like who is going to be paying for that and who's going to be taking the risk of a project that may not come online in the next 5 years, but maybe it's going to become a 10 or 15-year timeline. And finally, for geothermal, I don't have a clear view on that one. Actually, I know that the WoodMac team has more research on this, but what I remember is that on the policy side, it seems that geothermal and nuclear are the technologies that are best positioned compared to traditional renewables. So there is some optimism that there will be like budgets for R&D and in general like interest from the government to continue pursuing these technologies alongside with fossil fuels. So I'm not sure like how the timelines for geothermal look like, but I know that it has been part of the conversation. So all things considered, like obviously I am biased towards renewables, but I know that there are these like all different options regarding the energy mix and how it can change depending on economics, policy, and ultimately who's going to be paying for all these new generation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sylvia. And now we are coming here to our final few questions here. You've been such a successful energy leader and have transitioned successfully from oil and gas to renewables. For somebody who's looking to follow your footsteps and transition from oil and gas to renewables, what are like the top three skill sets that an oil and gas professionals would be able to bring and add value to the renewable energy sector?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I kind of cheated because I was not fully like an oil and gas professional. So like I was in consulting and in my particular case, like I just transferred my consulting skills from one industry to the other. So it was like a very direct transition. What I've heard from other colleagues that are currently in oil and gas and looking to pursue other careers or to focus on the renewable space is right now like actually before doing that like I think it highly depends on the industry or the specific technology that you're going to focus. Maybe I don't know, like if there is anything on project management, that like if you're a project manager on the oil and gas side, then you already have some transferable skills that could be used for project management in renewable projects or general large infrastructure projects. So I get like I don't have, I think, a top three, but the main thing would be to see, like, do these reflection on, okay, what are my skills? What am I currently doing? What are the types of clients I'm working with, or what software, what, like all the different aspects that make up your skill set, and see how they can fit some other roles. First of all, within the same oil and gas industry, because that means that is a sign of a transferable skill, and then just doing like that next step on, okay, what is the renewables industry looking for? So obviously there is going to be a preference for someone with renewable energy experience. That's where all the knowledge and listening to podcasts like this, doing some courses on renewable energy is going to help. But I mean, there's so much work right now in renewables and we need all the hands that the industry can get. So yeah, like if you have transferable skills, then it should be like a good first step, at least to start a conversation with someone in the renewable energy space. Perhaps the only other suggestion that I would have is to do a lot of networking. There are renewable energy events all across the world. So in the US in particular, there are different nonprofits that help either people that are active in the renewable space meet other stakeholders with a similar profile, or that help people that are interested in renewables to start like knowing about companies, knowing people that are active in the industry. So I highly encourage like any oil and gas professional looking to do this switch to renewables to participate in those conversations. And that's a good way to ask people, like, what are you looking for? Like, what is the skill set? What is the profile that your company is looking for? What are the skills that I should be developing? Any specific software I should be learning? Those kinds of things like could be very useful. And I always say like cold applying on LinkedIn doesn't really work. What I encourage colleagues and mentees is connect with someone from the company that you're looking for. And that can be the very first step in. And don't connect with them like with the mindset like, oh, I'm going to ask them for a job. Connect with them with a genuine interest of learning about their career and also learning about their role in the company. And then naturally, like that curiosity can spark like this connection. Connection is the most important part. And that way, it's a very organic way, not only to expand the network, but also to increase the likelihood of your resume reaching the right person.
Totally resonate with all that advice that you've provided, Sylvia. Such sound advice. Now, just extending that conversation a bit further, there's so many events that happen in USA, conferences, renewable energy, energy transition. You are currently residing in the energy capital of the world, Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Would there be any specific like energy transition or renewable energy conferences that you would recommend attending in Houston, perhaps?
Yeah, in Houston, I think like over the past couple of years, there has been RE Plus, Texas. So like it's like the local chapter of the largest renewable energy conference in the US or in North America in general. So it's a good opportunity. Like it's always a good event, and the main players come here throughout that week. So that one is good. Um, the other one that comes to mind, and it's one that I'm biased because I've joined that conference over the past couple of years, is called ENERGIZE. So this is a conference that covers everything related to renewables. And they have very interesting panels on financing, on development challenges, capex efficiency. So if you're interested in like more of a deeper dive in the renewable space, that conference is really good. And there are also several events that are hosted by the Renewable Energy Alliance. I've been to a couple of happy hours and sessions from them. There's also the Young Professionals in Energy, like organization. They also organize like these, I think it's mostly happy hours. So it's mostly for networking. And obviously, I'm going to mention the two nonprofits that I lead in the Houston area. So I do happy hours and networking events as part of our Women in Climate um, organization. So it's like if you are interested in working on climate change or active on that space, we want to connect with you. It's focused on women and non-binary people just because we have seen traditionally more challenges for women and anything related to STEM. So we want to create this safe space. And there's also the Women in Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energy Houston chapter. We organize panel sessions, power coffees, lunches, volunteering events. So women that are active in the renewable space, they can connect with other like-minded women. So I guess like these last two, they're mostly focused on women, but it's also like a good opportunity to connect with other people in the renewable space. So I think there's a lot to do. There are a lot of events. I'm probably missing a bunch, but those are the ones that I personally join.
Amazing to hear. So lots going on, lots of events and organizations
Yeah.
that would encourage our viewers and listeners to definitely check them out. Thank you so much for sharing those, Sylvia. So that concludes the formal portion of our interview for today. We like to end our podcast with a fun segment called a rapid fire, where our viewers and listeners get to learn a little bit more about the personal side of our guests. Now, as part of this rapid fire, I'll be asking you three quick questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Okay, let's do this.
Great. Well, firstly, Sylvia, as this is a tech podcast, would love to learn what's your favorite app or a hardware product that you enjoy using?
My favorite, app or hardware product. You know, the latest one, it's an app called Root. It's like it's used to block certain apps within your phone. So I am guilty of doom scrolling. I love Reddit. I love Instagram. So I acknowledge that it sometimes may be too much. So that one is just like I block it, and I there is absolutely no way that I can unblock it until the timer ends. So I think it has been really good to increase my productivity and not be as distracted. So I can use that time instead. It gives you the hours that you have saved. So like I exercise, I walk my dogs, I clean the house. Like I just tried to do something else. And I think it has been very productive.
Amazing to hear that, Sylvia. Secondly, what's been a book that you have read that has had a big impact on your life and why?
This one might be a bit shallow, but it's called The Analyst by John Katzenbach. And it's a psychological thriller. So nothing energy related, nothing super sophisticated, but it was actually the first long book that I read. And that's the one that sparked my interest in reading. So actually right now I prefer to read nonfiction, but I like that. I don't know, it was the first time that I felt compelled to keep reading. So yeah, I think that that is the one that has the biggest impact in my life because I am an avid reader now, and I think it's probably because of that.
Great, Sylvia. And lastly, do you have any final words of wisdom, perhaps a short story or a quote that you'd like to share with members of our audience?
Um, Learning is a lifelong journey. I think it's a bit corny, perhaps a bit cliche as well, but I genuinely believe that we can learn so much from every single person we talk to, everything that we do. And if we're not learning, then that's a sign to change how we're doing things. So I keep that as my mantra every time that I talk to someone, every time I'm working on my research, or even like doing simple things in my house, like how can I do this differently, better? So just I feel that that has helped me on my personal life, on my professional career. So hopefully that can also help many of your or inspire many of your listeners.
Very well said, Sylvia. So that concludes our rapid fire and interview for today. How can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you?
So for the Interchange Recharge podcast, you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast. For more information specifically related to my research, you can follow me on LinkedIn. My handle is Solar Sylvia, and I know that Arjun is going to be adding my contact information there. So those would be like the two main avenues to connecting with me.
Well, thank you so much, Sylvia, for being on the show today. It was an absolute honor and pleasure having you. And thank you so much for sharing your subject matter expertise in the world of solar. From the team at Energize, wishing you and the entire team of Wood Mackenzie lots of growth and lots of success.
Thank you so much. It was really fun. Thank you, Arjun, for having me, and thank you to all the listeners for joining this.
Absolutely. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our episode for today. And remember, a greener future is in our hands. I'm Arjun Chaudhary.